Well, welcome to Trek Trav. Today's video is Sexy Trek. What we're actually going to be talking about is how sex has been used throughout the Star Trek series from TOS to the end of Enterprise, and how it's not been particularly progressive. Make sure to stick around, like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into it. It's a big thing talking about sex, and I've wanted to make this video for a while, mainly because, and I originally thought about 7 of 9 and T'Pol and how that they were in these outfits. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Rick Berman, but then I couldn't help but go Deanna Troi, Riker's sexy nipple, Uhura's short skirts or Chapel's short skirts. Like, you can't not recognize these things within the Star Trek universe. So let's start with the 60s. It was a very different time, very different Star Trek universe. The fact that TOS ends on women can't be captains is the least progressive thing about Star Trek TOS. Well, there's a few things, but for the time, you have to have leeway. In terms of the way the women dressed, there was no characters in pants that were women, unless they were older women or aliens. Certainly, Uhura's dress almost comes right up to the inappropriate places, and it's, I want to say, not good. It's certainly a 60s look. It's a 60s mini dress. Gene Roddenberry was known for his like for the ladies, including Nichelle Nichols, Majel Barrett, who actually, now I think about it, did wear pants in the original pilot. Not after that, when she played Chapel. Then we move on to the movies. The sexiness was taken away, the military aspect was added in. It very much felt like the movies were a much more serious tone. Uhura, the sexiest thing in the movies that Uhura does is the fan dance. And if you don't know the fan dance, let me refresh your memory. That is unfortunate. And it wasn't even Nichelle Nichols' choice, like, other than she thought that she would sing the song. But they got someone else. And poor Nichelle Nichols had to deal with the fact that they used her as kind of a sex thing and not even used her song or her voice. And really, in the Star Trek movies, the film tended towards a more military realistic background, except obviously when William Shatner was apparently doing this. And then we move into the TNG era. Now, the TNG era had Gene Roddenberry at the beginning. Here, once again, very liking of free sex and free love, and Gene Roddenberry, once again, a lot of issues with women, but he had a very progressive mind. So we got guys in dresses. We got Deanna Troi in a catsuit. We got Riker nipple. We got a ton of stuff, of which, while being progressive in that it showed both men and women, very much geared towards sexuality. But when did that stop? And I want to tell you, it wasn't until Gene Roddenberry left and Jerry Taylor became more involved. But that's not to say that it was over. So I would say Deep Space Nine, while the women were sexy and strong and powerful, Deep Space Nine really didn't delve into certain levels of sexuality, except for when they went into the mirror universe or when it was relevant to the story. The latter half of TNG, unfortunately, still had Deanna walking around in this, and then she eventually wore a uniform. Although I would argue that Tasha Yar in the beginning of TNG was sort of the anti-Deanna. Then we move to Star Trek Voyager, and the ratings are going down. It's about midway through the series, and what do? They shove Jennifer Lien into this. It's a catsuit. Why would you put a character like that in a catsuit? One that's only technically, I think, 3 or 4 years old. Made her hair longer, made her more feminine. And it's like, okay, they did that. Then they decided to get rid of Kes as a character and brought in Jerry Ryan. Literally, Rick Berman and Brannon Braga have said that Jerry Ryan was brought in to be a Borg babe. Very much about the ratings. Now, this character could have come in and could have been essentially just the eye candy of the series. But what Jerry Ryan did was take a character who functionally, I think it makes sense for her to be in a catsuit, because the Borg don't have a sense of sexuality, so being in a catsuit is just to hold everything in place so it doesn't get in the way. That kind of makes sense in my head. Jerry Ryan also played this character as a very strong character, as well as a very flawed character. Different layers of emotion. Her relationship with Janeway and with the crew was different and unique, as opposed to taking away from the other female characters. And she did. Everything became about Seven once Seven was there. B'Elanna Torres had been poised as being the strong, feisty, a bit fiery character. Her stories were cut to a minimum. And I still argue that she was a far better sexy character. Like, if you upped her, if you had made her more prominent in the series, I think that she would have really exploded at being sort of the tough lady. And I think Janeway was one of those characters that built on her strengths and grew and changed. And you had women there who could have been really interesting. Even Jennifer Leanne's Kes was an interesting character if they'd reached their full potential. But instead of doing that, and they went for the, how do we get more ratings? Let's go sexy. And of course, Jerry Ryan did date the producer later on, so it seems a little bit weird. But 7 of 9 was a built and an amazing character. In regards to her sexuality, it actually kind of didn't hold her back. It benefited her being the strong character in that she wasn't aware of it the way that other characters were. Now, the flaw in this argument, and this is Voyager trying to get more ratings, DS9 brought in Worf, they brought in another TNG character. It made sense for that. The flaw is Star Trek Enterprise, where they introduce a Vulcan character, T'Pol. She is wise, she is unemotional, she is very limited in sort of how far she can express. First time we see her, she's in this. It's a catsuit with a cloak. The second time we see her aboard the Enterprise NX-01, she's like this. Now, why is a Vulcan in a catsuit? It doesn't make any sense at all. She was a character that is Vulcan. She's very logical. Clearly, she would have been aware of sexual tensions on a long voyage, on a mission. It made no sense for T'Pol to be that kind of character. And it very much, like, there is zoom-in footage of her in the decon chamber. It is a very odd thing. But later on, in season 3, they give her an upgraded uniform. What do they do with this upgraded uniform? They just bring it down to the cleavage. It's just right to the boobs. And there is no practical reason for this. Pretty much every other Vulcan in the series is wearing 1,000,001 robes. I get that she's on a Starfleet ship. She has to have something practical so she can go and do things. But is it practical? Is it practical to have a catsuit? Not at all. Is it there clearly because Rick Berman and Brannon Braga felt like Jolene was hot, let's put her in the ship? And it very much was. It's the same with Connor Trenier on a level. Now, I'm not including the new versions of the series because they are very different animals. But when you look at the past, Gene Roddenberry very much had a focus on human sexuality, very much. It's in the 60s, very much. With TNG, there was a bit of that. There was a bit of him going, look, sexy men, sexy women, oh, aren't they amazing? The naked time being a question that we don't want to go into. But Gene Roddenberry ultimately felt like he gave the impression that men and women would be sexualized at the same amount. When Rick Berman and Brandon Braga took over, it began a progressive walk to sexualizing women in an uncomfortable way. An example being Jerry Taylor very much put women, and she worked on TNG and Voyager, very much wanted the captain of Voyager and B'Elanna to be strong, independent women who could handle their job and their position. Even with Deanna, she put her in a uniform towards the end of TNG. She gave Crusher more things to do on the Enterprise. But Jerry Taylor left towards, I think it was the third season of Voyager, and when they said, how can we increase ratings, they thought two things. Borg babe, let's see some Borg bosom. And that is the mistake. So as much as the franchise tends to go, oh, we're super progressive, it kinda isn't progressive when it comes to portrayals of certain women characters initially. Sexualizing Seven became like a joke. So Q's son took her clothes off. Ooh, she's sexy. Harry Kim was falling over himself 4/7. That isn't cool. It's the nature of having male writers in the writer's room and not having a female voice. In that, for example, Jolene Blalock was, considering she had little acting knowledge, she was brilliant at acting through her eyes, which meant that she very much could convey all her emotions through her eyes, but her face looked neutral. Did not help with them zooming onto her underpants or zooming onto her walking away, or they very much put her in uncomfortable situations. Her having a mind meld and getting essentially mind meld aids, her getting addicted to drugs, her sexually cracking onto people was just bad choices after bad choices. How do we make this woman, who is clearly a pretty good actress or a great actress, instinctual actress who just came in and nailed it, how do we make her look better? Let's put her through all the shit. None of the men go through the shit. Travis could have gone through the addiction. Hoshi could have gone through some stuff. No. Let's make DePaul be just the most inappropriately used character in, I would say, the original run of the TNG era. Besides Beverly and her ghost sex. But yes, it's a very interesting thing. Rick Berman has been accused of many weird things, many uncomfortably weird things. In terms of how he handled women characters, how he dealt with things, stuff with Terry Farrell. Go and research it yourself. But let me just say that while Star Trek is progressive, there are certain elements of the show that are very much of their time, but also very much of the white male feeling. Which, let's get into the future, which is why the new series, a lot of people don't like. A lot of people from that original demographic. Because, look, Rebecca Romaine is a beautiful woman, but she wears the same uniform as Uhura. And she wears the same uniform, essentially, as La'an. And even if they do wear a dress, they have leggings. It is an appropriate military look, or at least more appropriate than almost visually seeing Nichelle Nichols in inappropriate ways. The new series are very careful not to push this. In fact, Strange New Worlds, over half its cast is female. So it's important that each one of those females has a unique and different personality that builds women up, doesn't tear them down. Whereas, for example, Deanna Troi crashed the Enterprise twice, spent 2 movies crying constantly, and I don't know why they felt the need to sort of tear her down in a way. So what do you think are the best differences between the new era and the TNG era and the TOS era? Because in my opinion, strengthening female character and strengthening minority characters makes the show stronger. But the TNG era, while being progressive for the time, wasn't as progressive as we all thought. And I am the TNG generation, and even I can see that The Naked Now was fucking crazy, or like many other episodes of TNG were just a bit off. And particularly Enterprise in that first season with the decon chamber, or Voyager with 7 of 9, the over-sexualization of female heroines, while can be done, doesn't need to be done by shoving them into tight outfits. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I have been Trek Trav, and I'll see you later.